Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
Well, thank you so much for coming on here and talking to me. I'm like so excited about this, or talking to all of us. I mean, like, and welcome everybody in the audience. I'm really excited about this one because I have so many questions myself for you. And then I opened up this poll on my Instagram, and I got so many questions from people. So I was like, yes, this is gonna be great. Cool.
That's good.
Nice. Before we start, I would like to thank Lunify for sponsoring this club, and I'm gonna tell and share a little bit more about them later. But I just want to real quick deep dive in. Do you want to start with introducing yourself?
Sure. My name is Kelly. I am a virtual lawyer for entrepreneurs and business owners. I help with trademarks, with contracts, with business strategy. So legally protecting your business, really encouraging business owners to be proactive about handling the legal. That way they can potentially save themselves from getting in a legal trouble in the future. And generally when you wait and are reactive instead of proactive, it'll end up costing you a lot more time, money, stress. So that's one of the main things I do is try to promote legally protecting your business as early as you possibly can.
Nice, love that. Cool. And a little bit about myself. I worked in corporate before, and I was laid off last year in June due to COVID. And no, actually now, no, wait, not last year. Wait, I don't even know what year it is. I'm a little bit over 1 year in business now. And after that, I decided to start my own social media agency. And now I help clients with all things social media, and I'm loving it. So yeah. When is a good time to legalize your business? And that I actually thought was a really, really good question because I never really thought about it. When I started mine, for me, it was the first thing I did before I was like, okay, cool, I have this one client coming up next week. Let's start an LLC. That's how I did things. But wanted to get your advice. What do you say? When's a good time to legalize a business?
So I guess it depends what you mean by legalize, because there's, a bunch of different ways to protect your business. But if you mean form your LLC, that kind of depends on what type of business you have. You know, the risk level of your business. A business that has a higher risk level, like maybe if you're an esthetician and touching people's faces, that's a little bit higher of a risk than maybe a copywriter. So that can kind of influence how quickly you'd want to get your LLC. But I pretty much kind of say that if you are planning to have an actual business, this isn't going to be just a hobby or something that you might only be doing temporarily, then you should probably consider forming that LLC with at least, by the 6-month mark or so, just to make sure that you are protecting yourself.
Got it. That makes sense. So for anybody that's kind of new to freelancing or just starting out with their own company, what do you say are the legal must-haves, things they should do immediately?
Generally, my recommendation to freelancers, for service-based businesses, is to get a client contract as your number one priority. That is probably the first thing you should do, either before your first client, preferably, or at least with the money you get from your first client, because there's just so many things that go into your contract. And if you just either, download one offline or, copy someone else's contract or try to write your own, you are going to be missing things that are going to be in there to protect you. And there's so many consequences of what can happen if you don't have that contract to protect yourself. And especially as, you're a business owner now, you have to think like a business owner. So you really want to make sure that you are protecting yourself as soon as you start doing any type of business.
Totally makes sense. And besides contract, I mean, I just recently started also sending NDAs to kind of also protect myself, especially when I work on certain strategies, so they don't that I know that my client will not share that with other people outside their organization. But do you say like that's like a must-have for like people starting out? I guess it depends on the case, I think, right?
Yeah, it depends on the business. I mean, my client contracts and the ones that I have in my templates already include NDA language. They have an NDA clause in the contract, and I know a lot do. So I think it really depends on what type of contract you have as well, and also what type of business you have. Especially if you have a business where maybe you like haven't launched something yet, like a program name or anything really, and you're going to work with someone else. Yeah, it's definitely more important to have that NDA. But overall, your regular client contract should have some type of NDA language just to protect pretty much anything else that goes on in your business as well, like your strategies and even pricing and pretty much everything that goes on in your business, your processes and operations as well.
Nice. So what do you say are like the big brackets or like things that like every contract should include?
So that's a lot of people ask that question, but it's kind of a hard one to answer because honestly, like I could list off a couple to you, and like protecting your intellectual property, refunds, payment clause, a very clear and descriptive clause for the scope of your services. But overall, every clause serves a very specific purpose. So that is really why like lawyer drafted contracts or lawyer drafted contract templates are just going to serve you better because there's so many clauses in your contract and all of them are necessary. That's why like lawyer drafted contracts tend to be a bit longer, like 10 pages or so, and it's because even the ones that you might not think are important or you don't really know what they mean, or why they're in there, like your governing law clause or something, they still serve a purpose to protect you. So really everything in your contract.
That's funny because I think mine has like 9.5 pages, and that's just like the master agreement, and then I have a separate document for like outlining the scope of work. And it's just every time I send this, I feel so bad because you just send like 14 pages to review, but then I'm like, well, there's a reason we're doing this. So
I know, I feel the same way. And one of my clients said, like, she was like, I feel so bad sending this. Like, do I really have to send all of this? And I'm like, well, kind of, yes. Like, to protect yourself, it's just like, I've gone through my contracts so many times trying to like make it like less wordy or like, is there anything that I can do to make this not as long? But that's just the nature of making sure that you have a protected business.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that I always read in those contracts, but to be honest, I never quite understood what it is. And at some point I also gave up trying to understand it, but maybe you can help me. What the heck is this word called indemnification? I think that's the word, right? I don't even know what that means.
That is.
What is it? What is it?
Basically a clause to that, in my opinion, that's definitely like the most confusing clause, just to kind of like grasp what it even means and to figure out like what party it's talking about, because so sometimes the indemnification clause will be mutual. In that case, it's kind of like easier to understand because both parties agree to indemnify each other, which basically means that like they're agreeing to kind of like cover the other person should anything happen, usually from like something that happens in something with a third party. So like let's say you are a copywriter and someone hires you to write the copy for whatever, like emails or something, and then you input it in your emails and it's good, but then a third party comes and they're like they contact you and they say that like that was their content, and it's theirs and you're infringing, you basically stole their content. but you hired this from the copywriter. You didn't write it, you didn't copy it, you didn't know. If there's that indemnification clause, they are basically agreeing that, like, should a third party have some type of claim against you, because the person that you put the emails out, they're going to come after you. The copywriter is agreeing to cover any losses that happens to you. So, like, if the person sues you for copying them because it was your emails that you put out, the copywriter will have to reimburse you for those costs or cover that litigation.
Oh, okay. Now I think like I have a grasp of what it can. Okay. Oh wow. Okay. To be honest, there's two things that running my business that honestly give me insane amount of anxiety. One is everything having to do with taxes. I'm just constantly terrified, and the second thing is everything that has to do with legal. But I feel like I've gotten a little better about it. So yeah, so talking to you definitely helps. I had a question regarding late fees. That's actually interesting because now 1 year in business, and now I had my first client that actually didn't pay on time, which was a complete new situation for me. Never had that before. And so it's going back to the contract to kind of see what it was in there. And I was talking to some friends, and my understanding was that the state kind of gives, I guess, a certain limit or so of like how much late fees you can charge or ask for. But then I have other friends that charge like this crazy amount, and I'm like, wait, are there any rules, or the rules that I have are just, I don't know what rules I'm following?
Yeah, so I think that can be somewhat dependent. Different states might have different rules on like what you can charge, and also what type of business you have. So that's something that has to be like kind of checked through your state before you have it, because some states might have certain protections for the consumer to protect against, like, exorbitant charges, basically.
Got it. Okay, cool. Because I think I only charged like 1%, and I had a friend who just did this, and it was like this $1,000 like project, and she was like, oh, late fees will be like $50, and I was like, oh, wait, good for you, but how did you come up with that number? So
yeah, it definitely differs, I believe, by the state, how much percent you can do, and also like the time limits might be different depending on the states also.
Probably. Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing. And that was actually a word also from Brenda, which I've never heard before. The nexus of which I guess I Googled, which means kind of like the location where you set up your like legal formation. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that also can depend on what type of business you have and what state you're in, because different states might have different rules on that. It's kind of like something that they use to determine like if you owe sales tax in that state, if you have to, pay, because especially as like business owners and online business owners, we're not anymore just selling necessarily to someone in our own state. So, you might be collecting and paying sales tax to wherever you live or wherever you do business. But if you do business in other states, sometimes you might be subject to pay taxes in those states as well. So that kind of is used for that, to determine like when a business has to pay taxes. Like some states have different thresholds. Like you made $100,000 that year in sales in a state, like an outside state, then you might have to pay certain taxes or whatever in that state as well. So that's kind of like what they call it. Like, does that person have a nexus to that state? And that it really varies by your state as well. But that's definitely more for like collecting sales tax. So it's more so with like product-based businesses.
Got it. So when I registered my LLC, I registered mine in California, and a bunch of my friends were like, why didn't you do that in Arizona? And I was like, wait, why? So then it kind of opened this whole can of worms. But by then it was too late for me because I already registered mine in California. But I guess there are certain tips and tricks on like what state you can get. I don't know. I guess better. I don't even know what the outcome is of like registering in like a different state. Maybe you can tell a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so as a general like rule, usually what will be cheaper for you ends up being the state that you actually live in. Because sometimes people just start a business and they're like, oh, I need to form it in Delaware or Wyoming or whatever because they heard that someone with a huge company said that that's what they should do or something. But it really depends on where you're doing business and where you live. Because sometimes if you do that, you still might end up having to pay in your own state. So that is really also state specific because sometimes, like if you live in a certain state but form your LLC and are doing business in another state, you still might have to register in your state as a foreign LLC. So like one that wasn't formed in the state you're living in. And that depends on your state as well, if you have to form a foreign LLC or not. So that's definitely an individual basis of like, will it actually save you money or does it not actually save you any money? And does it just cause you to have to do more paperwork because you didn't form in your own state? California, however, would be one where like it would potentially be, something to discuss with like an accountant when you're forming your business because California has that like $800 a year franchise tax for your LLC that most, if not all, other states don't really have anything like that. So if you're in California, I would definitely say talk to an accountant about what's best and depending on where you're doing business. But for any other state, generally, the general rule is that like it, in the end, in the long run, it likely won't change that much whether you file somewhere else. So it's probably better to file in the state you're actually living in.
Makes sense. I had no clue that those other states don't charge the 800. I thought that was like a US-wide thing. It's like, dang. Okay.
Yeah, every state is different. Like it's all the way from like, I think the lowest state might be even like 40 or 45 or something, like a one-time fee to file. And then other states, California is the highest at 800. For New York, it was just 200 and it was a one-time fee. And you have to keep up with like reports, but not the type of yearly fee that California has.
Yeah, and it was also funny, I had no clue, but my accountant just told me that I actually have to call the tax board, that apparently if you registered your LLC last year due to COVID, they were waiving the $800, but I had no clue about this. Honestly, nowhere I was able to like even, like nobody ever told me that, or like there was no information like publicly accessible that like shared that hey, you don't have to pay. So now I'm like trying to get my $800 back to see if they can prorate it for next year. But
I heard that they did waive it. I forget the dates though of when they started that. But
yeah. So yeah, it's on my to-do list. I have to figure it out.
Yes.
So for anyone on here that does not have the resources right now to work with a lawyer one-on-one, because obviously there's like a price tag to that. What do you think about buying templates from certain sources? Like I did that myself too. I hired a independent contractor, and I was like, okay, cool. I can go to my the person I usually work with, and I was like, I already know getting this from him will probably cost me at least 3-4 hours of his time. And downloading that template was like I think $250. So I thought in that case. It was an okay deal that I made with myself, but just wanted to hear your thoughts on it because you're the pro. Like, do you in general think like this is good? I guess it also depends on like where you get them from and if they include everything. But yeah, just wanted to hear, what do you think about like templates being available online?
Yeah, so I think it definitely depends on where you're getting them, but a ton of lawyers have contract templates. I do as well. I think if you are purchasing it from a lawyer that like is familiar with online businesses and stuff, then it's definitely a great resource, and I definitely recommend that for newer business owners who, don't really have the funds to hire a lawyer to custom draft every single contract. And I mean, that's why I think a lot of us created them, to kind of like fill that gap, because when you're starting a business, who really has like 1,000 plus to invest per contract to have it custom drafted? So I think templates by a lawyer are a great resource, and I think when you're just starting out, or even anywhere in the earlier stages of your business, I think that it's a great alternative. And as long as you know where you're getting it from, then I think that's definitely a good option. And I think it's like, because I said like your contract is probably like your number one priority, I think the contract template is a great one. Also, to get custom contracts, you not only have to pay a lot of money, but to have a custom contract drafted, I also generally I would only draft contracts for people in my state, because I'm only licensed in 2 states. So for that, you have to find, a lawyer familiar with the online business world also in your state. So contract templates are kind of just more cost effective, and also usually more easily accessible for the newer entrepreneur who is just starting out.
Nice. Okay, cool. I hope that helps a lot of people in the audience that are just starting out. Okay, cool. What is a trademark, and do I need one? Which I guess kind of goes with my other question I had, like, what am I supposed to do if somebody very publicly is stealing my ideas, my courses, or something that I put out there? Would a trademark help with that, or are these 2 different things?
Yes, so trademark can help with some of that. So when you think of trademark, think of your brand. So trademarks don't protect your ideas or anything like that. Trademark protects the name of something that is part of your brand. So this could be your business name, it could be your logo, it could be maybe a tagline that you have. It could also be the name of your signature online course or signature group program name. Something that is really stands out as a brand, and it basically identifies your business in connection with certain services. So it's not just a cute saying that people want to sometimes protect hashtags or a saying that they say a lot, but it has to also be related to the services, or the services that you provide or the goods that you sell. Your trademark, the reason that you want this is because it protects that name. That way you as a brand stand out, and you can protect yourself from anyone else kind of popping up with the same or a similar name as you in the same kind of area. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have a signature course for, how to get better at social media or something for the newer business owner. Whatever that name is, you don't want other people kind of popping up with the same exact name for a very similar course, because then there could be confusion. You don't really stand out. If someone is just finding you on the internet, maybe they're not sure if this course is from you or it's from someone else, because there's 2 courses with such a similar name in the same type of area. They're both helping entrepreneurs on social media. So having a trademark protects you, because you then have ownership over that name in your social media area that you've applied in. So then if someone else does pop up with a similar name to you, you can send them a cease and desist, take it further. You can try to get them to stop using that name, because you have rights to then use it. And if you don't have that trademark, then you don't really have as much recourse if someone copies your name, or even has a similar name. So it's harder to stand out if you don't have a trademark. Also, if someone else gets it before you do, this happens, a lot of times with business names. If someone else gets it before you, they could potentially block you from continuing to use it, or you'd have to rebrand, or, you know, you might say that they copied you, but they have the trademark. So then you would have to go through a lot of litigation basically to figure out who actually has the rights to use that name. So pretty much, if you don't have a trademark, you don't own your business name, or, you know, any type of program name, product line, whatever it is. You're kind of just using it only until someone else blocks you out of it. And the thing with trademarks to know too is that it's not just an exact match. It can be anything similar. So, you know, maybe someone's course ends with academy and someone's course ends with program or school or something. But the first two words of each of their programs are the same. The person that has the trademark can still block the other person out, even though the name is slightly different. So that is a bit about trademarks in a nutshell.
Damn. Okay. Wow. Okay. I had no clue. So I guess if I would ever launch anything course related, I guess there would be two things to it, right? Probably trademarking it as soon as possible. And then I guess there also goes a lot of work on your end too, because I assume whoever, like the lawyer I would be working with, would do all this like trademark research to figure out that can I actually use that name. And yeah, I guess, I don't know. Yeah.
So usually the first step in the process before we file the application is a search, and it's also kind of like equivalent in pricing to the application, or sometimes even like more. Like, part of the reason why trademark services cost a decent amount, a couple thousand, isn't just for the application, it's for this first part, and that's the search. And basically that is done to like assess the risk level of your mark, because the process itself can take about a year, and obviously is costly. So you don't want to go through that whole thing if your mark that you have is already in use by someone else, or there's already someone with a name that's so similar that it's going to be really hard for you to get through. So that search really combs the whole internet, the trademark office database, but also the internet in general, to really figure out if there is anything similar to your name in somewhat of a similar or the same area. So it doesn't necessarily matter if it's in a different area, because like for instance, like Dove deodorant and Dove chocolate, they can both exist as a trademark because they're, you know, such different areas. Like, me going into a store, I'm not going to get confused and think like that it's the same owner of the deodorant and the chocolate, because, you know, they're very different goods. But if Dove deodorant, you know, someone popped up with like a Dove body lotion, that's much more similar. So that's really why the search is done first, to kind of like assess all of that beforehand, and also to make sure that you're not infringing on anyone, and maybe they just like haven't found you yet. So that can kind of help with that as well.
Okay. So you mentioned that submitting this, or the whole process, takes a little bit of time. So once submitted, am I then safe or like okay-ish to use that, or do I actually need to wait until this is approved for me to like be able to use that name?
No, so there's two different types of ways that you can submit the application. One is if you're already using the name, and then one is if you intend to use it, like maybe you didn't launch yet, but you plan to. But both of those, regardless of which way you file, you still have to be already using your name before the process can officially complete. Like, so before you register your trademark, it has to be in use. You have to be selling it in commerce. So even though you might not get the official registration for like a year or maybe even more after, you can still be using it that whole time. And really the benefit of getting your application in is that you hold your place kind of in line with the date that you file, because then anyone that tries to go after you, one, you're going to pop up in their search result when their attorney does a search. And then also for the trademark office, they're going to look at your application first before the other one. So, if it's similar, you'll get first priority.
Got it. Cool. Thanks for sharing. I had no clue, but now I'm gonna look into this. Well, I mean, I didn't launch anything course related yet, but I have some ideas, so maybe I should look into trademarking that.
Yes, it happens a lot with people's business names as well. Just because, they start their business and then eventually, or a couple years down the line, they'll get hit. It actually is happening right now. There's a case on TikTok. Well, I came across it on TikTok. A small business owner who has been in business for a couple of years. She didn't trademark her name. She went to, I think, start the process and found out that a follower of hers actually filed the trademark for her business name and her services and stuff, got the trademark, and is now, because they own the words, not her, they said she can have it if they pay her $17,000. So because she didn't file for her business name, she has to either pay this person $17,000, rebrand, which is going to cost thousands, because she already has thousands of dollars worth of inventory with the name on it, or continue with the litigation for who actually owns this brand, since it's this person technically stole it from her. But even though she was using it first, entering into trademark litigation like this is going to cost tens of thousands, definitely over 20,000 to do. So that's just really the importance of kind of doing the trademark earlier on than waiting until it's late. And also why you need NDAs for your client stuff, because you never know what someone will do.
That's a good point. Oh my god, that story is so sad though. But
I know,
yeah.
it really is.
Oh my god. Nice, cool. As you know, right, this club is sponsored by Lunafy, so if you ever want to check them out, it's actually really cool, because what I really like about it is that it gives you kind of a live screenshot of how much taxes you owe, and I couldn't find it with any other finance tools yet, but it's really cool, so you can uncover possible write-offs and things like this. So if you want to check it out. Also, for everybody in the audience, the app is downloadable from the App Store. Cool. So Kelli, thank you so much for taking the time coming on here. This has been incredibly insightful. I learned so many things. I'm so excited. And yeah, I hope everybody in the audience loved it as much as I did.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on today.
Of course, anytime. Well then, see you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.